What's up, everybody? Welcome into All Tied Up. It is Friday. It is October 25th. And listen, tomorrow's a good day. Last week was not. Last week is not. Tomorrow's going to be a good day. I feel very confidently in that. I feel very confident in this game for Alabama. And we're going to get into that and talk about some of our players that are not really on the clock, but players we think are going to show out tomorrow. I've got a lot of feelings about this game. I've done a lot of research and deep dives. I'm joined by one of my good friends in real life and online, which are few and far between. Clint Lamb, how the hell are you, dude?
I'm doing fantastic. So you're feeling good about this one? Are you feeling confident?
Outside of Mercer, there's not a game left on the schedule I feel better about than this one. I know that sounds. Let's just get. You want to just get into it?
Yeah, let's do it.
I'll just rattle it off. Here's my thought on Missouri. I love Missouri as a program. I love what they're doing. I love they're putting investments into the stadium, the renovations. They were at the forefront of the NIL stuff. You talk about with anyone close to the program would tell you, Eli Drinkwitz was taking these kids on their recruiting visits to the State House 2 hours away outside of Como to go show them like, hey, look, this is the legislation we're trying to put in place so you can start getting paid. It's because listen, NIL is still different from state to state, conference to conference, like all that, right? They've done a tremendous job figuring out ways to get ahead of that. You got like the Luther Burden potato chips. They've got some coffee thing they just rolled out with like 7 different athletes from like, I think 3 or 4 different sports that aren't even football related. They've done a great job with it. I love it. My best friend is a Mizzou fan. Here's the thing about Mizzou. Mizzou is Vandy with a fake ID, and I will die on that hill. They're a great school. They're very smart. They have a great fan base. They are a facade of a 6-1 team. And I think that the schedule you talk about.
Didn't Vanderbilt beat Alabama?
Okay. Just let me make my jokes, please.
Okay. I'm just saying, I feel like that's going to be the comments, man.
I mean, I've been saying that forever. They are, I'm not saying this team. I'm saying fan base as a program.
Okay.
Okay. They are cool Vanderbilt. Okay. Not talking about this year on the field, but when you look at this Missouri team, they're 6-1. You look at ESPN, their strength of schedule rankings. I don't take their FPI projections into account as much, but their strength of schedule rankings I do because that's what the actual, the college football playoff rankings will be based off of when they come out, right? When they start talking about the resumes and the remaining strength schedule and the current strength of record, all that kind of stuff. It's 73rd. They played 7 games. It's 73rd, by far the lowest in the SEC, the easiest schedule anyone's played. The one time they've had to play really anyone, Vanderbilt at home, you go to double overtime, you win by 3 because of a missed field goal, and then you get on the road, which this game is on the road for them, and they got their ass handed to them by 31 against A&M. It was 34-0. By the way, Clint, that game was coming off a bye. They had time to prepare for that. The one thing that this Mizzou team has done well at times over the past couple of years is they have been pretty good in the passing game, in the intermediate passing game especially. I promise I'm coming to an end here because I know this is very long-winded. But here's the thing about Mizzou that I thought going into this season. Love that they went 11-2 last year. Like they had a home loss against LSU and they had a road loss against UGA. They beat Ohio State. They get 11 wins, right? Look at the bigger sample size of what they have been under Eli Drinkwitz because this is year 5. In those 4 years prior to last year, they were 3-13 in road games. 3-13. They were really bad on the road. They've played one notable game on the road this year, and it was at A&M. And again, they got their ass handed to them. They're going to be without Brady Cook. Luther Burden has been a shell of himself from a production standpoint as he's been in the past. They're without Mookie Cooper, who just had his biggest – they have 5 players on the offensive side of the ball that are either doubtful or questionable for this game. Even if they were playing, they're not, I don't think, that great. This season, they're just not. Like they lost more defensive players in the NFL draft last year than Georgia did. Like they just lost a lot of talent. Love what they're building. Don't think this team should be on the same field as Alabama on Saturday. But if Alabama decides they want to keep them there, like they've done the last 3 weeks with their opponents, then we could be in trouble.
That's where I'm concerned. And I will continue to be concerned until they do something to disprove that is the kind of team they are. And that is, just someone that's going to play down to their opponent. And I guess I am because I'm kind of right there with you. Like I have a hard time with this because there's just so much on paper that leans Alabama, but there was so much on paper that leaned Alabama against Vanderbilt and against South Carolina. And both those games were really close. And I think I'll continue to say this. I think Vanderbilt is a better football team than Missouri. I understand that Missouri has the head-to-head. To me, I still believe what I believe. I think that, South Carolina is not a better football team than Missouri, but I think they present more problems with their pass rush. I think that, with their, running quarterback and kind of the strain that he can put on you with his legs, that opens up some opportunities as far as your downfield passing game. I mean, it's obviously helped Milroe a lot throughout his career.
What are you talking about, Brady Cook?
No. I'm talking about Lenore Sellers at South Carolina.
Yeah.
I'm just comparing, while I don't think South Carolina is a better team than Missouri, I think that they present problems that Missouri doesn't.
Agreed.
That really played in against what Alabama does well, or can exploit some weaknesses. And that's why I say, okay, but I still got to see it because it really doesn't matter. We can come up with all the different reasons. I mean, look at Tennessee's offense and the way that it had struggled, and Alabama's, defense in the first half through, I think, pretty good play. I mean, when you go and you watch, I mean, obviously Tennessee missed some opportunities in that first half, more than a couple. I mean, they could have put points on the board. So it's not like Alabama played a great game for the entire game, but I think relative to how they had been playing, I thought they were coming along pretty nicely. And hopefully that continues this week, especially when you're going against Drew Pine. The Notre Dame transfer, I think he went to Arizona State. And so, now he's here at Missouri. Nate Noel, their starting running back, he is, doubtful for this game. I mean, and Luther Burden, that is probably one of the more interesting players in college football. Like, it was kind of like Harold Perkins last year, but like the offensive equivalent.
That's the best example anyone's used. That's so spot on, man.
Yeah, I mean, there was just so much hype. I mean, this guy's supposed to be like stupid good. And he has been productive like at times, but it just hasn't been to the degree that everybody thought. Now, Granted, I think a lot of that's just somehow Brady Cook fell off a cliff. As far as just his ability to be effective consistently compared to last year. I think, it's like with anybody, you get a returning starter at quarterback, and teams are going to spend the entire offseason figuring out what you do well, what you don't do well, and how they can exploit both. And so, that's a big part of this. But we'll go ahead. We're going to be talking about kind of matchups or players to watch. Chris, do you got anybody that stands out immediately for you?
Well, I don't like this game anymore because last week I said Kendrick Law, and he did have a big moment in that game against Tennessee. It just wasn't a moment that we all really enjoyed watching. Let me start with this. Because I have players. The first one's a cop-out, but I want to say a matchup instead. So I'm going to use one of my two as a matchup, and I will say the player. The player is Jalen Milroe, in the quarterback position in general. But here's the thing. So, in my opinion, and I have been screaming this since really the South Carolina game because it's the first time I saw him not do it. And I just thought to myself, I was like, well, South Carolina is like a really good defense. Like they have led the SEC in takeaways in the last 3+ years since Clayton White's been the DC. I host Locked On Gamecocks, and I've been kind of ahead of this curve for a while. But that's a really, really good defense, and I knew they were going to give some matchup problems. Tennessee also a good defense, right? And they do some other things too that are similar to what Carolina does, which is get to the quarterback, provide pressure.
And they were at home.
Yeah, and so then it's like, but the thing for me, and Missouri doesn't pose that threat. They just don't pose that threat, and that's not even a knock at Missouri or anything like that. I promise. They don't pose that threat. And the biggest thing is for Alabama, I think, to get back on track, you have got to throw the ball deep. It is the one thing about Jalen Milroe that no one can argue, like as polarizing of a player as he is for whatever reason. It's the one thing about his game that no one can argue. He throws the deep ball very, very well and very, very accurately. Now, it's one thing that Brady Cook has struggled with all season, and they have continued to try and kind of force. It's like that quote from Mean Girls, like, stop trying to make fetch happen. And they kept trying to throw the ball deep, and it just wasn't working, right? So I think that even with Drew Pine in, I don't know what that's going to look like. This is a guy that's played 4 games this year. He's got under 5 yards per attempt, 10 for 21 for 78 yards against Auburn. It's not like they stopped trying to throw it, but you're talking about, 21 attempts and 78 yards. That's less than 4 yards per attempt, right? I think that if you are going to get back on track for Alabama, you have got to throw the ball deep. Now, Missouri's defense has allowed 11 plays all season long through the passing game that are 20 yards more. They've allowed 11 total completions all season long on passes of 20 yards or more. That is first in the SEC. It's third in the country. So you're going to have to attempt to at least get downfield and get other guys open, whether it's Ryan Williams, you targeted him 18 times last week, or it's Jeremy Bernard, or it's Kendrick Law, or whoever. You're going to have to get other people involved. I think they will. I really like this matchup for Alabama. That's the biggest strength for Missouri going head-to-head against this Alabama team, but I think Alabama is going to be able to take advantage of it.
Well, and what's interesting is that when you talk about like the vertical passing game, like there's two elements to that. And I think Alabama on their own side of things, they've kind of struggled in some ways with both. And that is, in order to be effective as far as limiting those explosive plays downfield, you got to do two things. You got to either A, you got to cover well, or B, you got to apply pressure on the quarterback. And I think a lot of Missouri's success has been covering guys well and with their schedule. I mean, I also think that the level of competition that they've been asked to play has certainly played a part in that. But when you talk about Jalen Milroe, it's really interesting. I shared this on Twitter earlier, but him on passes of 20 plus yards, his first 19 starts, which dates back to the Texas A&M game in 2022, he was averaging over 50% completion rate. He was averaging almost 5 attempts per game, 4.7. He was averaging close to 100 yards per game on the deep passing, and he had 23 touchdowns and 2 interceptions in 19 games. That is over 1 touchdown per game as far as a vertical shot. And that is with him going 0 for 1 with an interception in his first career start against Texas A&M, where he looked like a deer in headlights. So all those numbers would go up if you were to take that out of the equation, but I went ahead and included it for the sample size. His last 2 starts, he's completed 1 of 8 passes of 20 yards or more. He still averaged 4 attempts per game, so not the attempts have still kind of been there, but
not really.
Well, I mean, it would, but 8 attempts. I mean, 4 per game. He's averaged 4.7 over those first 19 starts. When you go and look, I mean, there are games where he's certainly higher than 4. Absolutely. Right. I mean, you'll see him 6, 7, but there's some where, but you'll see him where some of those where it's lower. But he's only completed 1 of them. It was for 34 yards, so he's averaging 17 yards a game. He's had 1 touchdown and 1 interception. So 2 interceptions in his first 19 starts as far as the deep ball. 1 in the last 2. He's just not being a very effective deep ball passer. Mm-hmm. And when you combine that with the fact that he's not being very effective with his legs, that's the 2 biggest strengths of this guy. I mean, and granted, he made improvement as far as like the short to intermediate. And I will continue to reiterate that he did not look good on that front against Tennessee.
No.
But, he has shown improvement against Georgia. I mean, I was really impressed with the 10 to 19 yard range. I thought he was doing really well with that stuff. And he's always, when people talk about accuracy problems, we're not talking about completion percentage, guys. We're talking about on the target throw. Right. And so a lot of times, I mean, his throws are kind of off target, but guys are still able to get their hand. They're not put in a clean spot. One thing about like Tua Tagovailoa, the reason he was so dynamic with the right outs is those were guys who could create yardage after the catch. Yeah. And in order to be effective as a receiver, as far as yards after the catch, your quarterback has to put the football in an area where you can bring it in and then generate those yards. Right. If you're running a slant and he throws it behind you and you got to spin and catch it, you're not generating a lot after the catch. Yeah. So, Tua was just a surgeon with that kind of stuff. Jalen Milroe really has not been a surgeon. He'll complete those passes. He puts it in a catchable area a lot of times, but it's not with the pinpoint accuracy. He's never really been that guy. But I agree with you. You've got to get, I don't know what's going on, if anything, with him. I really don't. We bring it up every show, I feel like, right now. And some people are like, stop bringing it up. He's not hurt. Right. I know whatever's going on with him. Something's not right. Mental, physical, don't know. But they've got to get him going as far as the ground game and as far as the vertical passing game as well, because you're 100% correct. He's better than he's shown the last couple of games. And it's really hindered Alabama's offense. Like, one thing they could bank on is, hey, we might not be able to generate the consistent drives, work our way downfield, control the tempo, control the game, but we can score quick and we can put up points that way. For me.
Well, hold on real quick.
Go ahead.
Before you say anything else about this, You're like the old adage, and like the joke would always be like, with Patrick Mahomes, like throw it up, Tyreek's down there somewhere, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with like, dude, if you're gonna target Ryan Williams 18 times, some of them need to be on go. Like, I just think you have got to figure out a way to get his confidence back. And I'll tell you another thing. This they need. Well, you know what? They need to figure out a way to get his confidence back. I think that's the best way to do it. So I agree with you, and I'm going to need you to send me all those stats afterwards. So I'm going to put those all over Twitter and pretend like they're my own.
Well, I will say you can go to Twitter right now. It's already up.
Is it up?
Yeah, I will say when defenses are playing too high safeties, they're really taking away your vertical ball. So if they're doing that, you've got to make them pay in other ways, whether it be with your traditional run game, absolutely hammering them out, or it's what? What are you laughing at?
I always forget the greatest tweet that you've ever had, and anyone maybe has ever had in sports media, is Andrew Garfield texting the other Peter Parker to see if Will Smith slapped Chris Rock in their universes too. 426,000 likes. It's so good.
Yeah, I will say it. A lot of people tried to steal that, and then people were accusing me of stealing my own tweet.
Of course.
That's. But anyways, if the defense is playing too high safety, they're trying to take away the vertical ball. You either got to exploit that by taking advantage of limited numbers in the box by running the football with your traditional run game or with Jalen Milroe. And so it might start, you talk about that vertical passing game. Sometimes it's not as easy as just chunking them up.
Yeah.
You've got to do things to force them to bring guys up into the box, and then you start taking your shots and your opportunities as soon as they do it, the first opportunity. But Alabama, Jalen Milroe in Alabama is just not doing that enough right now, or at least they haven't seen enough consistent success on that front in recent weeks. For me, the big matchup that I kind of am looking at, and obviously Brady Cook probably not being available in this game limits this somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, if you're Drew Pine, you've got a superstar at receiver, and that is Luther Burden, and he's a guy who can create yardage after the catch. That's kind of his. He can win vertically, but he can do a lot as far as, the yardage after the catch side of it too. So he lines up 85% of the time in the slot. He's predominantly a slot guy. You talk about Alabama's Husky, whether it be Devontae Smith, who got banged up last week. Reagan Morgan got banged up last week. You ended up seeing King Mack. We're expecting Devontae Smith and Red Morgan to be back this week, but how healthy are they? Are they 100%? Are they completely fine? And if so, okay, they're going to play a huge role. Now, granted, when you're going motion, which I guarantee you they're probably going to be putting Luther Burden in motion. They do a lot. It's like he's kind of their jet guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'll see some of that. They'll manufacture some touches for him, but they'll also get, the football out into his hands in space and see if he's able to generate some offense for them that way. When he's in motion, your Husky probably isn't going to be covering him, but they're going to be covering him enough where that's a really intriguing matchup to me because, Devontae Smith, especially, he's a guy who's willing to come up, be really physical, working off of screen blocks and things like that. And I think that, with the limited passing game they're probably going to have, that's going to be a lot of what they want to do. And then you'll get the Theo Weiss vertical shot, probably against Xavier Brown, if I had to guess. It could come against Damani Jackson or someone else, but just Xavier Brown's kind of been the guy that people have wanted to go at. So you'll probably get that element thrown in, but it's going to predominantly start and really their consistency with their passing game is probably going to be, a de facto extension of their run, which is just getting the football out in Luther Burden's hands and just seeing what he can do with it.
So here's my thing on Luther Burden. I brought this up in the offseason. Missouri fans got upset with me about it.
You upset a fan base? Man.
I know, right? Isn't that crazy? If I somehow make it through election season without losing another account, it will be a miracle. But no, here's the thing. Last year at the start of the year, Luther, I felt like the moment Luther Burden got on campus, I was like, you have to get this kid the football, right? One time in his freshman year, he had more than 6 receptions in a game, and it was in the bowl game against Wake Forest. That's it. I was like, and for a while there, I was like, man, just force it to him if you have to. He's your best offensive player. They didn't. They went 6-7, losing in the bowl game, whatever. It was the 3rd straight losing season under Eli Drinkwitz. Last year, you saw the first 6 games. I put a graphic together with it. First 6 games of last season for LSU or for Mizzou, they go 5-1. He had 7 receptions or more in all 6 of those games. There was not a single game where he had less than 7. He had 7, 8, 7, 10, 11, 11. Okay. He averaged 120 yards receiving in those games, and he scored 6 touchdowns in the first. 5 touchdowns in the first 6 games. Then you look at the back half of the season, those last 7 games. The things that stood out the most, his production was cut in half. He had only 1 game where he had over 6 receptions, right? He had 9 for 158 against Florida. He had only 4 touchdowns. That includes the bowl game. His receptions, he had one game over 7, or 1 game with 7 or more receptions, and it was just 7. I'm sorry, it was 9. He had only 1 game with over 100 yards receiving. So his averages were cut in half. He was averaging 60 yards per game or less than 60 yards per game. And the thing that stood out most, in the first 6, you played 1 ranked opponent. The last 7, you played 4. So it was a lot different when the competition got hurt. Now, Missouri fans were upset because they were like, well, he was injured. Sure. Okay. Well, he played in all those games and he still put up a ton of stats. But I mean, it's when they don't get him the ball, in my opinion, I'm not saying that I know this to be true, because I feel like I've watched a lot of Missouri football willingly, which is an odd thing to say, but when they don't get him involved, especially involved early, it looks like to me he becomes very disinterested.
Yes,
and
he does.
I think that's a fair thing to say. I think he's a great player, but I do feel like that's where he's at. Drew Pine, 8-4 as a starter all time. Let's not forget that he lost the starting job to Tyler Buckner. So
I knew that was coming up at some point. In this
you
episode. I wasn't even going to say, when I talked about him transferring from Notre Dame, I was like, eventually Chris is going to stumble his way across that little
1,000%. 1,000%. Okay, here's my next player, and honestly, it's not even. I feel bad for even putting it on the player because it's obviously out of their hands, literally out of their hands. I'll put it on DeBoer. And what's the name of our OC again? I should know this.
Nick Sheridan.
Yeah, cool. I'm not going to refer to him by name until he wins a ball game.
Okay.
Give the ball, hand the ball off. I want to see Jalen Milroe turn around and put the ball into the stomach of 2-6 or 22. I am so tired of watching these 2 very, very good running backs. I think Jam Miller is further ahead than Justice Haynes right now. But I am so tired of watching us not put the ball into the stomach of those players. I said this last week. People got all over me about it. Tennessee fans especially somehow got upset. You guys didn't run the football because you couldn't run the football. Alabama never tried to establish the run again. They did not. I think I texted you about this. I know I told somebody about it. In the first half of last week, Alabama had 27 pass attempts from Jalen Milroe. Now, what that tells me is that they thought the best route and path to victory was to throw the football against Tennessee. I don't think that they went into that game saying, like, well, we're going to try to run. We couldn't do it, so now it's over. He had 27 pass attempts and 9 carries in the first half. 9 rush attempts. I know that sacks are included in that, but you ran 45 total plays on offense. Now, keep in mind, we were bitching about this a couple weeks ago when they played Vanderbilt. They ran 44, I think, total plays. You ran 45 in the first half, had the ball for 18 minutes. Did nothing off the turnovers. You had 45 total plays. 36 plays technically were ran through Jalen Milroe, which means 80% of the offense was either him running or him dropping back to throw, including the sacks, because I think you gave up 5. You had 50 total dropbacks. I love Jalen Milroe to death. I will support this kid forever. I think he is QB1, hands down, point blank, period. The path to victory has never been, hey, let's let Jalen drop back and throw it 50 times. That has never been something he has done. I don't know why you would try it out in a road game against Tennessee if you were trying to think that that's the path to victory. This is a kid that I think he's a phenomenal quarterback and gets a lot of unfair hate, but he deserves some criticism over the past couple of weeks. 27 pass attempts in the first half. This is in 20 starts as a starter at Bama. He'd thrown for more than 27 attempts twice in those 20 starts. We did it in the first half. That leads to a career-high 20 incompletions, missing 10 open receivers. He was clearly off his game. I think you have to get him back into form. But one of the ways you're going to be able to do that is by establishing the run and handing the ball to Jam Miller and Justice Haynes. I'm tired of seeing the box scores of, oh, we got 11 total carries between the two running backs. Like, what the hell are we doing? Like, run the football, establish the run. And here's the other thing too, Clint. I will die on this hill. As bad as that offensive line has looked at times, I think that where they're probably at their best as a unit, not just the left side, is road grading and running and like run blocking, not dropping back, because that has clearly been an issue over the past 2 weeks. Missouri does not pose the same threats defensively, especially in the front four and especially off the edge, that Tennessee and South Carolina do. They just don't. Run the football, establish the run, get back to basics. And here's the last thing I will say on this whole show, since we said we're going to go 15 minutes and we did 25 already. I am dumb enough and delusional enough to believe in this team still, because I do think they are talented enough to make the playoff and go deep, because we've seen what they did against Georgia. We saw how they handled Wisconsin the week before going into the bye week. I hope we get a repeat of that. Here's the thing, and I want everyone to hear me very clearly when I say this. You're going to beat Missouri, okay? Get to the bye week, get healthy, get refocused, figure it out, and then go to Baton Rouge. And if you beat LSU in Baton Rouge, you are going to make the playoff, because Oklahoma's not going to beat you, Mercer's not going to beat you, and you get Auburn and Bryant-Denny, and they're also 2-5. So win these next two games, and you have a clear path to the playoff, because you still have the best win out of anyone in the country on that resume with that Georgia win. Maybe I don't know, the Oregon, whatever, it doesn't matter. But you have a really good win on your resume. You will make the playoff, and you are a name brand. You'll make the playoff. You've lost in Death Valley 6 times in 67 years. It is not insurmountable odds to go get to the playoff. Focus in, lock in, and go win 2 ball games, and then go win 3 more for that, and get your ass to the playoff. Get some extra downtime. You don't have to make it to Atlanta. I still believe in this team, and I think they're good enough to win. I need them to show me something on Saturday.
Well said. I mean, I'm right there with you as far as like what's interesting about the Milroe thing is they had him do that in a game in which he never has looked worse passing. Like, if he was just throwing bombs, and it's like, I get it, man, just ride it. I mean, he's hot. I mean, but they're like, oh, it's the worst he's ever looked in the passing game.
Right.
Let's throw him 50 times. Let's see if it's almost like they try to like throw their way out of whatever rut he was in for whatever reason.
They ran it from their own 7, like out until like that still blows my mind. We ran it 7 straight plays. And like, 4th and 1, let's punt it.
That's another good point. And the thing about it is when they did commit to the run game, you don't have to commit that hard. Like, it doesn't have to be nothing but running.
No.
Can we just see a drive where maybe you run 2 or 3 times in a row, and then you maybe play action off of that?
Yeah.
Or you talk about those vertical shots. Like, I mean, I guess I would need to go back and look at the play, or once Alabama got that last first down, and then they ended up, obviously not converting and then punting. I would love to see what Tennessee was doing defensively, because the way that Alabama kind of ran their way to around, the 40 or whatever it was, 50, you would think, okay, maybe they were playing things in a way where Alabama could have got one of those vertical shots in, and you just saw them be very stubborn on that front. But just to drive your point home on that, was after week 3, as far as Alabama's rushing attempts, the quarterback was responsible, design quarterback runs was responsible for 27% to running backs getting 73% of the design quarterback runs. Since then,
when was that? Sorry.
This was after week 3, so prior to the Georgia game.
Okay.
And then after this past game against Tennessee, where it currently sits, is 32% design quarterback runs and 68% design running back runs. So what that's telling you is you went from 27% to 32%. That's a 5% increase for the quarterback, 5% decrease for the running backs. Not only that, but that's the averages. So it's been higher than that from the Georgia game on to make those averages come out the way that they have. So my point in saying that is they've gotten away more from the traditional run game than they were earlier in the year. Like, you look at USF, and I understand the explosive plays hadn't been there. I understand that, but it just, when you see that drive against Tennessee, where it's okay, you commit to running the football, you do it on early downs, you have some success, you keep riding it, you let those running backs get in a little bit of a rhythm, and it's amazing what happens. Like running back is a very rhythmic position too.
Yeah.
You just haven't seen that enough as far as it's like, okay, how do you expect these guys to get into a rhythm when they aren't getting, it's like you get one carry and then that's probably the only carry you're going to get the entire drive. And not only that, but you're going to rotate with the other guy and you're going to spend the whole next drive on the bench. So it's like 20 minutes between carries. And that's exaggeration, but how as a running back are you supposed to get any sort of momentum going when that's the case?
Agree. Dude, how about this? What do you think? You might know the answer off the top of your head because you're Rain Man. What do you think? How many yards per carry do you think that Jam Miller is getting?
I mean, I know that his averages are high, but that's mostly because of all the explosive plays at the beginning of the year.
Okay.
So, I mean, he in SEC play, I mean, he's averaging sub 4. In Jam's averaging, say what?
6.4 on the year.
Yeah, solid on the year.
Okay. Justice is 5.8. Now, granted, he's got 271 total yards. 84 of that came on one play against Western Kentucky in the first game. I fully get that. But here's the thing, man. I'll play the doomsday scenario here because I think this is a situation you have to actually start respecting is if you don't start getting these kids carries, especially somebody like Justice, probably aren't going to be here next year. Like if I'm Justice Haynes and I'm trying to get to the league, I'm not sitting in a situation where I'm getting an average of 6.71 attempts per game,
which is wild.
That is dude. And then you look at this on the season, and I respect everything you just said, and I understand that this is also based off of having some like the sack yards and stuff like that. But dude, they have 108 combined attempts on the year. Milroe has 91. A game, you're talking about 15.7 attempts per game between the two running backs, 13 per game for Jalen. I'm torn here sometimes because what they did against Georgia was awesome. And it's exactly what I think I go back to all the time with one of the greatest stories I've ever heard about Bama was when Kiffin came in after the kick six, and they brought Kiffin in to be as an analyst before the Sugar Bowl. And he goes up to a whiteboard and he draws 5 numbers. And it was 2, 4, 27, 9, and 88. And it was Yeldon, DeAndre White, Coop, Derrick Henry, and O.J. Howard. He goes, these are your 5 best offensive players. Get them the ball over and over and over again. That's it. And you saw it in 2014 in his first year. They threw the ball 127 times or Coop had 127 receptions or 114 or what. It was an SEC record. The next year, Derrick Henry wins the Heisman, has 29 touchdowns on they just stuck the ball in his stomach and were you're the guy. Go get us a win. I'm okay with the idea of Milroe's our best offensive player. Let him go out and make plays because it happened against Georgia. It was great. But like you said, if you're watching him play, dude, listen, I played baseball. If I've struck out 3 times in this game and we're tied in the 9th inning and there's runners on 2nd and 3rd, I'm okay with you pinch hitting for me if I'm in the middle of a slump. Now, if I'm 7 for my last 9, absolutely. I am tearing the cover off the ball. Do not do anything. But make an adjustment, guys. And part of that, honestly, man, is it's his first year as a head coach in the SEC. It's clear that he is, in my opinion, overthinking a couple things. And he has to also figure out and get into a rhythm because I think it happens for coaches and play callers when they're in a rhythm and they're feeling themselves and they are in I don't know what's a state of flow. Is that what it's called?
In a groove?
Yeah, that's a better way to put it. I was trying to flow state. That's a thing I've heard on the kids are saying. I feel like I've heard on TikTok. Shut up, Clint.
I think they're talking about something else. Anyways, go ahead.
but yeah, if you're in a groove, just let them do that. I think I just talked for 13 minutes.
No, I mean, yeah, and you talk about Justice Haynes averaging 6 carries a game. Guys, we should be talking about there's certain drives in games where he's getting 6 carries,
exactly.
Where you literally just start hammering him that entire drive, and then you get Jam in on the next one, and
right.
Then you mix in some stuff. But there needs to be times in games where it's if you full on commit and you keep defenses on their heels, the second they start being like, man, they're like hammering us with this run game, then you play something off of it. But what's weird is that if they don't have success on early downs, they kind of just immediately get away from it. And it's like, okay, you're willing to let Milroe throw his way out of his rut, but you won't let these guys, you won't give it's like one run doesn't have success. It's like, okay, well, that's the run for this drive, or at least with the running backs.
Right.
I just think you need to show more of a commitment there. And guys will, they'll come on the run blocking. I think there's been some issues there, but I don't think you're doing it enough. No. I think it's a different type of run blocking when you're doing the things as far as out on the perimeter with your quarterback. So yeah, I'm with you. Definitely think that the running game has to be a bigger part of this offense. I think the more that it does become a bigger part of your offense, the more that's going to open up some of that downfield stuff, and maybe you can get some of that stuff corrected.
Yeah.
And then just from there, it's very tough to take away the vertical shots and to take away a run game, because it kind of, you go too high safety, that's one less guy in the box that presents opportunities for run games. Yeah. Somehow Alabama was not able to have success on the ground against Tennessee, and it wasn't able to have success downfield. And I think a lot of that's just self-inflicted stuff that they weren't taking advantage of enough. All right, man. I appreciate you. Is there anything else you want to add before we hop out of here?
No, I've talked too much, as always.
You definitely have, but I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I think people will hopefully enjoy this conversation. I think it's been productive, and just hashing some of this stuff out, man.
Yeah.
You work through some of your own thoughts. So appreciate you as always. We appreciate everybody who listened. If you haven't already, like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's huge for us. Numbers are growing every single day. And then you got to get over to covercrimson.com. A lot of great conversations, been adding people all week. And I will say the posters we have over there, great comments, great observations, really fun stuff over there at covercrimson.com. It's only $1 for the first month, but guys, that deal ends Sunday. It's no longer going to be on the table. We bought you guys an extra week with the higher ups, and we certainly appreciate them for giving us that opportunity. But if you want that $1 to try us out for the first month, you got to get over to covercrimson.com. Only a couple of days left. Chris, appreciate you as always, brother. And we will do this again, I guess, on Sunday after the game.
Yep.
And hopefully, the first thing I'm telling you when you hop on is, Chris, you know what? You were 100% right.
Yeah, it was a get right
game. All right. Appreciate you guys.
See you, brother.